AA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
2 cars were fired before the 2008 Florida 500. These 2 cars were Mac Icar and Donald Morphy. I'll get to the replacements in a bit. Now to the rookies. Jack DePost is a rookie this season, replacing Rusty Cornfield. So is TG Castlenut, who started last season but is going full-time this season. Speedy Comet is also a rookie this season with the retirement of Daryl Draggard. Now, Mac Icar's replacement is Apple Racer. Very creative name. Chip Gearings will be a rookie this season as well, replacing Donald Morphy. Replacing Manny Flywheel is Parker Breakston. I hope he wrecks the mean green car. Sam Garnish Jr. has come over from IndyCar, and now he'll be racing in the Piston Cup as a rookie. Colin DePedal is another rookie this season, and he's the number 140. Jack Armstrong, Chuck Armstrong's cousin, will be racing in the Piston Cup this season as well as a rookie. Hank Weathers, who is the King's son, will also be a rookie this season, alongside Patrick Carparquier, who has the Valvoline sponsorship. Liam Ingus will also be a rookie this season. Yes, he's Hall Ingus's son. Here is Ricky Axel. Thank you, comment section, for telling me his name, and he will be a rookie this season. There's also Robert Turner, who will be a rookie this season. Why is he number 77, though? And another rookie, Danny Kerbin. And yet another rookie! This one is Lucas Nitro, who's the number 59. And Henry Wheeler, who will be sponsored by Parts.com. And Ronnie Carson, who's sponsored by Igniter. And Tom Trimtire, sponsored by something, I can't exactly read it. And Michael McDrive will be yet another rookie this season. And there's also Doug Throttleman, who was around last season. And finally, the last rookie I need to talk about is Recar Smith, who also has a new look alongside Doug Throttleman. Quite a lot of cars have new looks, including Matt Karzith, as usual, Greg Beeple, Denny Carlin, Kyle Bushtire, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Mike Yankee Jr., Mark Carton, Casey Corner, Elliot Draftler, Casey Gears, Michael Cartrip, Joe Brakecheck, Eric Carmarola, Sterling Carlin, Terry Carboni, JJ Traley, Travis Draftville, and Scott Rims all have new looks this season. Jacques Villeneuve, a Formula 1 champion, will be racing a part-time schedule this season, alongside Cario Franchitti, who's raced in IndyCar. He'll be racing a part-time schedule as well. Joey Logierno will also be racing a part-time schedule in the Piston Cup this season with the intent of going full-time in 2009. He'll also be joined by Billy Steer, who's also on a part-time schedule this season, and Jason Overdrive, who will also be going full-time in 2009. Greg Speedland will also be racing a part-time schedule this season. No, he's not Cole Speedland's son. And another racer who's racing part-time this season is Rev Rodages, who's the number 76, and he'll be replacing Krusty Rotor whenever he retires. John Speedson will also be racing a part-time schedule this season as a backup racer. And also, same with Owen Wheeler. Both he and Speedson were brought into the Piston Cup by Mark Carton. Tommy Highbanks will also be entering the Piston Cup as a backup racer to Johnny Blamer. Aiden Shiftwright, Kevin Shiftwright's cousin, will also be entering the Piston Cup as a backup racer, which means yet another Shiftwright will be racing in the Piston Cup. But unfortunately, Krusty Rotor will be dropping back to a part-time schedule, and he'll be retiring at the end of the season. Some other cars that will be retiring are Dale Carrett, who will retire at some point this season, Sage Vanderspin, who will be retiring at the end of the season. Other cars retiring at the end of the season are Johnny Blamer, Davey Apex, Ward Burnton, Kenny Shiftwright, Rudy Washtire, Brielle Dustfield, Eric Goodcar, and Oliver Engines. We'll miss you after this season. Now onto the teams. DEI, which has merged with Gear Racing, now has 9 cars! How does any team have 9 cars? And Pancake Shiftwright Racing also has 9 cars! And are thinking of adding a 10th! How? Rush Racing still has the same 6 cars as last season, but Matt Karzith and Greg Beeple changed their looks once again. Chevrolet Motorsports has gotten rid of Kyle Busch-Tire, but they've added Dale Earnhardt Jr. to their team. Speedson Racing, to deal with the retirement of Brush Kerber, has added Colin DePedal. Joe Gears Racing now has Kyle Busch-Tire in the team, JJ Traley is out, and Joey Logierno, the part-timer, who's now in. But unfortunately for Joe Gears Racing, Tony Gasworth is thinking of leaving at the end of the season to make his own team. That was long. Now on to Chip Carnassi Racing, who adds Cario Franchini to their team. Reverham Motorsports has the same 4 cars since late 2006, but Casey Corner and Elliott Draftler have new looks. Richard Chillpaints Racing is the exact same as last season. Michael Cartrip Racing is now a 4-car team with Michael McDrivewell joining them. Vitalin Racing is also exactly the same as last season, and Blaster Charger Racing. How is this team still going? No one ever qualifies! And even that. Zachary Drifter quit, which makes Nick Charger the owner again. The Crazy 8's team apparently adds a car, even though the team's in the middle of collapsing. I don't get it. Bill Drivers Racing adds 2 cars, also in the middle of collapsing. Alloy Wilson Racing just sticks with the same 2 cars, being Mark Burnsley and Rudy Washtire. The Anti-Chick Hicks team. Kyle Traxon found a replacement with Henry Wheeler. I don't get it. Red Bull Racing is now a separate team with Brian Vickers and AJ Carmadinger. Wood Brothers Racing only has Speedy Comet now, since Daryl Dragon retired. Dynaco Motorsports still only has Cal Weathers. Strip Weathers Racing only has Bobby Carboni. And a new team, Lucas Nitro Racing, with Lucas Nitro. Yes, he's also an owner, but unfortunately before the Florida 500. Buck Schooner would get lost! Hank Weathers would get sick! Oh no! Now they have to miss the race, but unfortunately, Lee Revkins, the car that started first last season, David Gillicar, Sterling Carlin, Floyd Movelhill, Johnny Blamer, Bobby Carboni, Ruby Easy Oaks, Doug Throttleman, Slider Petrolski, Jeremy Carfield will all be out for a single race, but Reed Sorenkar will be out for 4 races. This is because of Kyle Traxon, who will be suspended for 14 races because of what he did. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the 2008 Florida 500, and Michael Cartrip, a 2-time Florida 500 winner, will start on his outside. Road 2 has Denny Carlin and Cal Weathers. Both were rookies in 2006. Row 3 has Tony Gaswood on the inside, someone who's never won the Florida 500, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. to his outside. Row 4 has the Rocket, Ryan Newcar, and 3-time Florida 500 winner, Jeff Gorvette, to his outside. Row 5 has Casey Gears and Casey Corner. Neither have won a race in a little while. Row 6 has Carl Edwards, and to his outside, Mark Curtin, who's running another part-time schedule this season. Row 7 has Sage Vanderspin and David Brakar, who qualified for the majority of races last season. Row 8 has a rookie from 2007, Juan Pablo Montoya, and Kevin Carvick, last year's Florida 500 winner. Row 9 has Bobby Swift and Greg Beeple, who's changed his look for this season. Row 10 has Brick Yardley, who won 2 races last season, and Dale Cart, who's thinking of retiring, to his outside. Row 11 has Morey Clutchburn, the 1989 Piston Cup champion, and Kevin Shiftright, to his outside. Row 12 has Brian Vickers and Kyle Busch-Tire, who's won 2 races. Row 13 has Martin Karks Jr., who got his first win last season, and Todd Marcus to his outside. Row 14 is Ernie Gearson and Matt Karzith, who usually does terrible in qualifying. Row 15 has Ricard Smith and, surprisingly, Brick Hicks, who's never qualified for a Florida 500 before. Row 16 is Clint Bokar and TG Castlenut to his outside. Row 17 has Chuck Hicks and Speedy Comet. I hope he doesn't crash. Row 18 is Elliott Draftler and Jeff Burnton to his outside. He'll probably jump over someone. Row 19 is Krusty Rotor, who complained about engine failures, and Jamie McCarry to his outside. Row 20 has Chip Gearings and Mike Yankee Jr. starting in 40th position. Row 21 has Ryan Thunderbolt Jr., who left Kyle Traxon behind, and Eugene Komareski, and starting in 43rd is Kurt Busch Tire, what are you doing all the way to the back? And here are some of the cars that failed to qualify for this race. And that's way too many cars! Like Winford, Bradford, Rutherford. And Oliver Engines. It's been 10 minutes, now let's get on to the race. Lightning McQueen will lead for the first 3 laps of the race before he'd lose the lead to Denny Carlin, who would only lead until lap 5, where his teammate Tony Gassworth would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 9 laps before Denny Carlin would retake the lead. He'd lead for the next 2 laps before he'd lose the lead to Jeff Gorvette. Jeff Gorvette would lead until lap 20, where Denny Carlin once again retakes the lead, where he'd lead until lap 36, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead. He'd lead until lap 40, where Kyle Busch Tire would take the lead. He'd lead for the next 9 laps before his teammate Denny Carlin would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 54, where his teammate Kyle Busch Tire would once again take the lead. He'd lead until lap 62, where Cal Weathers would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 65, where once again Denny Carlin takes the lead. And he'd lead until lap 68, where his teammate Kyle Busch Tire would once again take the lead for himself. But on lap 74, Lightning McQueen would once again retake the lead, leading until lap 81, where Jeff Gorvette would pass him for the lead. But Jeff Gorvette would only lead for a singular lap because Kevin Shiftright would take it from him. But he'd only lead for 2 laps before his teammate Kurt Busch Tire would take the lead from him, leading for 10 laps before his younger brother Kyle would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 107, where Matt Karseth would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 108, where his own teammate Greg Beeple would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 110, where Kyle Busch Tire once again takes the lead, leading for 10 laps before the Rocket Ryan Newcar would take the lead from him. He'd lead for only 1 lap because Greg Beeple would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 2 laps before Michael Cartrip would take the lead for himself, leading his first lap of the race. But Ryan Newcar, the Rocket, would retake the lead on lap 124. But on lap 125, Kyle Busch Tire would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 162. Krusty Rotor would be out on lap 141 because of an engine failure. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would take the lead on lap 162, but he'd lose it 6 laps later to Casey Corner, who'd lead until lap 170, only for 2 laps. But then Tony Gassworth would retake the lead, leading until lap 171, where Dale Earnhardt Jr. would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 188, where Clint Bokar would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 191, where Bobby Swift would take it from him. He'd lead for 4 laps before Jeff Burnton, probably jumping over Bobby Swift, would take the lead, losing it on lap 202 to Jeff Gorvette, who'd lead all the way until lap 210, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead for himself, leading until lap 231. But unfortunately, Chuck Hicks is 16th as of lap 222 when he wrecks. Murray Clutchburn, why? Ryan Thunderbolt Jr. and David Raycar, why? Mean Green Car. Tony Gassworth would take the lead on lap 231 and then lose it on lap 273 to Kyle Busch Tire, who'd only lead for 2 laps before Kevin Shiftright would retake the lead, leading for 3 laps before Denny Carlin would once again retake the lead, leading for 2 laps before Greg Beeple would take the lead for himself, leading until lap 283, where Cal Weathers would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 5 laps before Jeff Gorvette would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 2 laps, but unfortunately, Chuck Hicks is second as of lap 290, where he wrecks the leader Jeff Gorvette. Why? Mike Yankee Jr. would take the lead after the restart, but he'd lose the lead on lap 292 to Kyle Busch Tire, who'd lead for 4 laps. But then, Michael Cartrip would retake the lead, leading until lap 299, where Lightning McQueen would once again take the lead. He'd lead for 5 laps before Denny Carlin would take the lead once again, leading for 2 laps before Greg Beeple would be back in the lead, leading for only 2 laps. But then, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading until lap 311, where Kevin Shiftright would retake the lead once again, leading until lap 317, where Dale Earnhardt Jr. would make a 3-wide pass for the lead, but he'd lose the lead on lap 321 to Kyle Busch-Tire, who used the wall. He'd keep the lead until lap 324. Chick Hicks is 29th as of lap 324 when he wrecks Casey Gears, Matt Karseth, Ricard Smith, and Speedy Comet. Why? The Rocket, Ryan Newcar, would take the lead after the restart, leading for 2 laps before Carl Edwards would take the lead for himself, leading until lap 330, where Denny Carlin would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 6 laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 342, where Bobby Swift would take the lead from him. But he'd only lead for 4 laps before Greg Beeple would take the lead, leading for a whole 8 laps before Cal Weathers would retake the lead, leading until lap 358, where, once again, Kyle Busch-Tire takes the lead. But on lap 365, his older brother Kurt would take the lead from him, leading until lap 369, where Kevin Shiftwright would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 372, where one of his other teammates, Ryan Newcar, would take the lead from him. But on lap 375, the Rocket would lose the lead to the jumper, Jeff Burnton. But then he'd lose the lead on lap 377 to Lightning McQueen, who'd keep the lead for 20 laps. But on lap 397, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would take the lead from him. On lap 402, when everyone went to go pit, Mike Yankee Jr. would take the lead for just 1 lap. But Carl Edwards would get bumped into the wall on lap 402 by Chickens! Why? And then Cal Weathers would take the lead after the restart, where he'd lead for 5 laps. Eugene Kobareski would be 16th as of lap 405, where he wrecks the Mean Green Car Chickens! Hooray! Now he's out! But the Mean Green Car says this to Eugene Kobareski, and Eugene Kobareski responds with this. Lightning McQueen would take the lead on lap 408 and keep it until lap 415, where Kyle Busch-Tire once again would take the lead, keeping it until lap 418, where his teammate Denny Carlin would take the lead from him. He'd lead until lap 423, where Kevin Shiftwright would take the lead from him, leading until lap 428, where Tony Gasworth would be back in the lead, leading for 9 laps before Kurt Busch-Tire would take the lead from him. He'd only lead for 2 laps before Carl Edwards would once again take the lead, leading until lap 444, where Dale Earnhardt Jr. would take the lead from him, leading for a full 12 laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead once again, leading until lap 463, where Kevin Shiftwright would take the lead. He'd only keep the lead for 4 laps though, because Ryan Newcar, the Rocket, would take it from him. But on lap 474, another blue car, Cal Weathers, would take the lead from him. On lap 481, Clint Bokar would be back in the lead, leading until lap 483, where Lightning McQueen would take the lead from him. But he'd only lead for 2 laps, because Kevin Shiftwright would take the lead on lap 485, where he'd lead for 10 laps before Jeff Burnton would jump over him for the lead, leading until lap 497, where Tony Gasworth would take the lead. And he'd lead the field into the white flag, where Ryan Newcar would take the lead on turn 2. But, out of nowhere, Brick Yardley would take the lead, leading for the final 2 turns to win the 2008 Florida 500. And here is the photo finish, where Brick Yardley only beat Ryan Newcar by 8 feet. And of course, Ryan Newcar would finish second. Bobby Swift would finish third, Kurt Busch-Tire fourth, Lightning McQueen fifth, Kevin Shiftwright sixth, Tony Gasworth seventh, Kyle Busch-Tire eighth, Elliott Draftler, who led no laps, in ninth, and Casey Corner rounding out the top 10. And here is the top 20 of the Florida 500, with Mike Yankee Jr. just barely missing out, finishing 11th. Denny Carlin's nowhere to be seen here.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
When I said Denny Carlin was nowhere to be seen, He's just absent from the top 20 despite the fact he led plenty of laps. And also, Chip Gearings and Brick Hicks surprised everyone when they finished in the top 20, considering that neither of them have ever raced in a Florida 500. The 2008 Piston Cup races 2 to 35 Part 1 should be out tomorrow. If not then it's the next day.
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Chuck Hacks will be suspended for 10 races because he cheated! The car that will actually start at pole position for the second race of 2008 is Kyle Busch tire. And David Rudikar gets to qualify for the race. But unfortunately, Kevin Shiftwright got sick right before the race, which means his cousin, Aiden Shiftwright, will race instead. Todd Marcus would accidentally start a crash that wrecks a bunch of cars and himself. Jeff Corvette would accidentally wreck Matt Karzith and himself on lap 262, but Jeff Corvette has a hard crash, and Piston Cup officials recommend that he parks out of the next race, but Jeff Corvette refuses and decides to keep going. Carl Edwards would lead the most laps this race, leading for 101 of them, and he wins the race, the second race of 2008. Lightning McQueen would finish second this race, Dale Earnhardt Jr. third, Cal Weathers fourth, and Greg Beeple rounding out the top 5. Dale Earnhardt Jr. will start at pole position for the third race of 2008, where Jeff Corvette would be out on lap 124 because he hit the wall, and Claude Scruggs would have his brakes fail on lap 154. Oh no! He gets flipped and has a career-ending crash. Brian Sparks will replace Claude Scruggs as the primary racer for Team Weekless. Martin Carrix Jr. would be out on lap 330 because of an engine failure. Carl Edwards would lead for most laps once again, leading for 123 laps this time. But Lightning McQueen would be the winner of this race, winning the third race of 2008, with Cal Weathers finishing second, Carl Edwards third, Kyle Busch tire fourth, and Brick Yardley rounding out the top 5. Lightning McQueen says this in response to Claude Scruggs' career-ending crash. Jeff Corvette will start at pole position for the fourth race of 2008, where Danny Corbin's out for the season on lap 16 because of John Hicks, who will be suspended for the rest of the season. Elliot Draftler would accidentally wreck Carl Edwards and himself on lap 270, but Cal Weathers would lead for the most laps, leading for 138 of them. Kyle Busch tire would only lose by 6 feet to Lightning McQueen, who's the winner of the fourth race of 2008, where they had a photo finish. Yep, that's how close it was. Tony Gassworth would finish third this race, Cal Weathers fourth, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. rounding out the top 5. Cal Weathers would start at pole position for the fifth race of 2008, where J.J. Traley would accidentally wreck Colin DePedal and himself on lap 10. And Colin DePedal says this, that's very mean. Casey Gears would somehow dance and then go airborne on lap 161 because of Kurt Busch tire. Why? And then his younger brother Kyle would lead for the most laps, leading for 171 of them. And then he goes on to win his first race of the season, the fifth race of 2008. Floyd Mulvihill would surprisingly finish second, Cal Weathers third, Bobby Swift fourth, and Kevin Shiftwright rounding out the top 5. But unfortunately, Dale Carrett has decided to retire after this race. Thanks for the memories, but we're going to miss you, Dale Carrett. And David Rudikar will look like this for the rest of the season. Tony Gassworth will start at pole position for the sixth race of 2008, where Eugene Kobareski would wreck a bunch of cars. Why? Lightning McQueen would lead for the most laps, leading for 218 laps! Leave some laps for the rest of us, Lightning McQueen! But Bobby Swift would lead the final one, winning his very first race, the 6th race of 2008. Moray Clutchburn to finish second this race, Matt Carr's at third, Lightning McQueen fourth, and Casey Corner rounding out the top 5. Cal Weathers will start at pole position once again for the 7th race of 2008, where Slider Petrolsky would go into the catch fence on lap 171 because of Kyle Busch Tire. Why? Elliot Draftler would get T-boned by Kurt Busch Tire on lap 198. Why? Brick Hicks would use the wall and dodge all of the crashes. How? Cal Weathers would lead for the most laps, leading for 175 of them, including pole. But the winner of this race is Denny Carlin, who wins the 7th race of 2008, where Greg People would finish second, Cal Weathers third, Carl Edwards fourth, and Kevin Carvick rounding out the top 5. Ernie Gearson would somehow finish 10th, despite the fact his tire popped on turn 4. Kurt Busch Tire will start at pole position for the 8th race of 2008, where Sage Vanderspin, who starts on the outside, gets bumped into the wall, and now he's out on the very first lap. Tony Gasworth would somehow go from 18th to 2nd on lap 3. Lightning McQueen would use the wall on lap 4 to gain positions. And Krusty Rotor would be out on lap 72 because of engine failure. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would almost lap the field on lap 196, but around 5 laps later, everyone unlapped themselves. Then, Kyle Busch Tire would be out on lap 258 because of an engine failure. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would lead for the most laps, leading for 152 of them, but Cal Weathers would go on to win the 8th race of 2008, where Ryan Newcar would finish second, Jeff Gorvette third, Jack DePost fourth, and Bobby Swift rounding out the top 5. Denny Carlin will start at pole position for the 9th race of 2008, where Kurt Busch Tire would wreck too many cars, and then Eugene Kubareski would be 6th as of lap 364, where he wrecks Kurt Busch Tire. Now he's out. Oh no. Kurt Busch Tire, don't say those words. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would lead for 15 laps, but then Kyle Busch Tire would be 2nd as of that lap, where he wrecks who? Dale Earnhardt Jr. But he's not out, luckily. But Kyle Busch Tire, why did you do that? Now Piston Cup fans are booing you! Denny Carlin would by far lead the most laps this race, leading for 358 of them, but Clint Bokar would take the lead with 1 to go and win his very first race, the 9th race of 2008. Second place is now the 2nd most hated car, Kyle Busch Tire. Mark Carton would finish 3rd, Cal Weathers 4th, and Brick Yardley would round out the top 5. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the 10th race of 2008, where Todd Marcus would be 20th as of the first lap, where he wrecks Kyle Busch Tire. Kevin Shiftwright would go airborne on lap 80 because of Andrew Axler? Why? And Craig Shiftwright is so angry he might come out of retirement. But Andrew Axler would be wrecked out 6 laps later by Kurt Busch Tire. Hooray? But he says this afterwards. I guess that's justified. Cal Weathers would avoid the Shiftwright Axler drama and lead the most laps, leading for 163 of them, and win the 10th race of 2008, where Carl Edwards would finish 2nd, Kevin Carvick 3rd, Moray Clutchburn 4th, and Floyd Mulvihill rounding out the top 5. And here is the top 20 in points. Lightning McQueen will need an exceptional race to maintain his points lead.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
This video was originally going to have 11 races in it, but it only has 9 because I needed to cut some parts out of this video and put it in the next video so I could get this video done on time. Oh, and Kurt Busch-Tire and Denny Carlin are not in the top 20 because they were very inconsistent in the first 10 races of 2008. The next part of the 2008 Piston Cup season will be coming out tomorrow or the day after that.
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the 11th race of 2008. The only major event is that Brian Vickers is out on lap 386 because of an engine failure. Tony Gasworth would lead for the most laps, leading for 257 of them. But Jeff Burton would be the winner of the 11th race of 2008, with his teammate Kevin Carvick finishing second, their other teammate Clint Bocart third, Cal Weathers fourth, and Greg Beeple rounding out the top 5. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the 12th race of 2008, where Chick Hicks will do his usual thing, wrecking too many cars. Tony Gasworth would be 17th as of lap 351, where he wrecks Chick Hicks, the mean green car. Hooray! Sage Vanderspin would surprisingly lead the most laps, leading for 56 of them. But Lightning McQueen would be the winner of the 12th race of 2008. Casey Corner would finish second, Bobby Swift third, Greg Beeple fourth, and Kyle Busch-Tire rounding out the top 5. Casey Corner will start at pole position for the 13th race, which has been renamed, and Chick Hicks would once again wreck too many cars. Kurt Busch-Tire would be 5th as of lap 155. Who wrecks? Who? The mean green car, Chick Hicks! Hooray! He's out! Casey Corner would lead for the most laps, leading for 89 laps, including pole. And he goes on to win the 13th race of 2008, with Kevin Shiftwright finishing second, Mike Yankee Jr. third, Chip Gearing's fourth, and Denny Carlin rounding out the top 5. Sage Vanderspin will surprisingly start at pole position for the 14th race of 2008, where Chick Hicks wrecks too many cars again. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Lightning McQueen would be the 2 cars that led the most laps this race, leading 50 laps each. And Lightning McQueen would be the winner of the 14th race of 2008, with Ernie Gearson coming a distant second, Kyle Busch-Tire third, Juan Pablo Montoya fourth, and Kenny Shiftwright rounding out the top 5. Kyle Busch-Tire will start at pole position for the 15th race of 2008, where the mean green car, Chick Hicks, would wreck too many cars. Tony Gasworth would be 8th as of lap 168, where he wrecks the mean green car, Chick Hicks. Hooray! He's out! Lightning McQueen would lead for the most laps, leading for 243 laps. But Dale Earnhardt Jr. will end up the winner of this race, the 15th race of 2008. Casey Corner would once again finish second, Kevin Shiftwright third, Cal Weathers fourth, and Matt Karzif rounding out the top 5. Kyle Busch-Tire will once again start at pole position for the 16th race of 2008, where the mean green car, Chick Hicks, fails to qualify. Hooray! David Gillicar would be out on lap 259 because of an engine failure. Kyle Busch-Tire would lead for the most laps, leading for 168 of them, including pole. And he, of course, loses by 3 feet to Cal Weathers, who's the real winner of the 16th race of 2008. And here's the photo finish. Kyle Busch-Tire was bumping him into the wall. Right, Lightning McQueen would finish 3rd this race, Kevin Carvick 4th, and Bobby Swift rounding out the top 5. Cal Weathers would start at pole position for the 17th race of 2008, where the mean green car, Chick Hicks, once again fails to qualify. Hooray! Lightning McQueen would not lead any laps This is the first time in his whole career that this has happened. He'll probably lead some laps in another race. Cal Weathers would lead for the most laps, leading for 317 of them! And of course, he wins the 17th race of 2008, where Denny Carlin would finish second, Casey Corner third, Jack DePost fourth, and Jeff Burnton rounding out the top 5. Speedy Comet would start at pole position for the 18th race of 2008, where the Mean Green Car wrecks too many cars! And then Casey Gears would accidentally wreck himself and the Mean Green Car. Hooray! Lightning McQueen would lead for the most laps, leading for 96 of them, and win the 18th race of 2008. Now who comes second? Cal Weathers does! Finishing second in the 18th race of 2008, Kyle Busch Tire finished third, Carl Edwards fourth, and Matt Kenseth rounding out the top 5. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the 19th race of 2008, where the Mean Green Car will be suspended for 2 races because he made fun of Mike Yankee Jr. But unfortunately, Kyle Traxon wrecks too many cars! And then Kurt Busch Tire says, Kurt Busch Tire, don't say that word! Lightning McQueen would lead for the most laps, leading for 108 of them, including pole. But Kevin Shiftright will be the winner of this race, winning the 19th race of 2008. Lightning McQueen would finish second this race, Carl Edwards third, Denny Carlin fourth, and Kenny Shiftright rounding out the top 5. Kyle Busch Tire will start at pole position for the 20th race of 2008, where Aiken Axler would be out on lap 81 because of an engine failure. And Kevin Shiftright says that's karma to Andrew Axler. But then, Colin DePedal would be 17th as of lap 187, where he wrecks Kevin Shiftright. Why did he do that? Oh no! Craig Shiftright and Andrew Axler are now getting into a tire fight! And because they did get into a tire fight, they'll be suspended from attending the next race. Lightning McQueen would be out on lap 307 because of Kyle Busch Tire! Why did you do that? And he'd lead the most laps, leading for 326 of them, including pole. And of course, he wins the 20th race of 2008, with his older brother Kurt finishing second, Speedy Comet third, Bobby Swift fourth, and Murray Clutchburn rounding out the top 5. Lightning McQueen would start at pole position for the 21st race of 2008, where the Mean Green Car would be wrecked out on the 3rd lap because of Todd Marcus! Hooray! But unfortunately, Michael Cartwright has an engine failure on lap 24, which means he's out! Robert Turner would also have an engine failure on lap 80, but this one resulted in David Stremrim crashing into him, and now he's out for the season because it was a hard crash. Mark Carton would surprisingly lead the most laps, leading for only 60 laps this race, but Carl Edwards would end up as this race's winner, winning the 21st race of 2008, where Tony Gassworth would finish second, Lightning McQueen third, Brick Yardley fourth, and Todd Marcus rounding out the top 5. Travis Draftville will start at pole position for the 22nd race of 2008, where Chick Hicks would wreck too many cars! But he gets T-boned on lap 83 by Kurt Busch Tire! Hooray! You wrecked the Mean Green Car! And then Kurt Busch Tire says this, defending Johnny Blamer. His friend Murray Clutchburn would go on to lead the most laps, leading for 84 laps this race. But Ricard Smith, no he doesn't, he cheated! Which means he'll be suspended next race. The real winner of this race is Tony Gassworth, winning the 22nd race of 2008, where Murray Clutchburn would finish second, TG Castlenut third, Jeff Burnton fourth, and Cal Weathers rounding out the top 5. Kyle Busch Tire will start at pole position, as usual. But Piston Cup fans begin booing him and throwing cans! Luckily for Piston Cup fans, Kyle Busch Tire would finish last because on lap 5, Brick Yardley would wreck him. Hooray! The Mean Green Car will be suspended for the rest of the season because he cheated! Later on, Lightning McQueen would go on to lead for the most laps, leading for 116 of them. But Kurt Busch-Tire will be the winner of this race, winning the 23rd race of 2008, where Kevin Shiftright would finish second, Kenny Shiftright third, Ryan Newcar fourth, and Carl Edwards rounding out the top five. As Pancake Shiftright Racing had a 1-2-3-4 finish, Craig Shiftright is very happy about that. And Sam Carnish Jr. joins Pancake Shiftright Racing. Kevin Shiftright will start at pole position for the 24th race of 2008, where Brick Hicks would lead the field from lap 36 to 79 without really trying. How? But 10 laps later, Kyle Busch-Tire would be 5th as of lap 89, where he tries to wreck Brick Hicks, who completely avoids Kyle Busch-Tire. How is that possible? And Brick Hicks would go on to lead the most laps, leading for 197 laps, but Kevin Shiftright still wins the 24th race of 2008, with Brick Hicks finishing second, Bobby Swift third, Carl Edwards fourth, and Chip Gearings rounding out the top five. Casey Corner will start at pole position for the 25th race of 2008, where Ruby Easy Oaks would accidentally start a big crash. Kyle Busch-Tire would lead for the most laps, leading for 92 of them, but he would lose the race by 10 feet to Brick Yardley, who gets his second win of the season, the 25th race of 2008, with Kyle Busch-Tire finishing second, Lightning McQueen third, Cal Weathers fourth, and Jeff Gorvette rounding out the top five. And here is the top 20 in points, with Carl Edwards only leading the field by 16 points. And Ryan Newcar is only 15 points ahead of Mike Yankee Jr. and Martin Kirks Jr.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
I forgot to mention that there's less than 1,000 points separating Carl Edwards at the top and Ryan Newcar in 20th position at this point of the season. And the next part of the 2008 Piston Cup season will be coming out tomorrow or the next day.
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Cal Weathers will start at pole position for the 26th race of 2008, where Scott Rims would be out on lap 17 because of Kyle Busch-Tire, who will also be out on lap 40. Bill Gears would have his brakes fail, and then he'd be out on lap 68. Other than just one other car, every single car would finish on the lead lap. Lightning McQueen would lead for the most laps, leading for 161 of them. But Carl Edwards would be the winner of the 26th race of 2008, where Casey Corner would finish second, Lightning McQueen third, Cal Weathers fourth, and Bobby Swift rounding out the top five. Greg People will start at pole position for the 27th race of 2008, but he would be out on lap 234 because of an engine failure. Johnny Blamer would accidentally start a crash, which also wrecks himself. Kyle Busch-Tire would lead for the most laps, leading for 179 of them, and he wins the 27th race of 2008, where Carl Edwards, last week's winner, would finish second, Jeff Gorvette third, Dale Earnhardt Jr. fourth, and Chip Gearings rounding out the top five. Jeff Gorvette will start at pole position for the 28th race of 2008, where Kyle Busch-Tire would be out on lap 172 because of an engine failure. Sam Carnish Jr. would accidentally start a crash that wrecked some cars. Matt Karzith would lead for the most laps, leading for 136 of them, but his teammate Greg People would win the 28th race of 2008, with teammate Matt Karzith finishing second, other teammate Carl Edwards third, Cal Weathers fourth, and Lightning McQueen rounding out the top five. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position once again, but this time for the 29th race of 2008, where Martin Truex Jr. would go airborne on lap 229 because of Kyle Busch tire. Why? Lightning McQueen would lead for the most laps, leading for 275 of them, including pole. But Cal Weathers would be the winner of the 29th race of 2008, where Lightning McQueen would finish second, Carl Edwards third, his teammate Greg People fourth, and Ernie Gearson rounding out the top five. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the second race in a row with the 30th race of 2008, where Eugene Kobareski would intentionally wreck cars. Why? David Gillicar would accidentally wreck Casey Corner and himself on lap 483. Lightning McQueen would lead for the most laps, leading for 339 of them, including pole. But on the last lap, he'd run out of fuel! Oh no! Which lets Bobby Swift win the 30th race of 2008, with Cal Weathers finishing second, Lightning McQueen somehow still finishing third, Dale Earnhardt Jr. fourth, and Carl Edwards rounding out the top five. Ryan Newcar would start at pole position for the 31st race of 2008, where Colin DePedal would be 26th as of lap 81. Where he wrecks Sage Vanderspin! Why did you do that? Brick Hicks would completely avoid the crash. How? Carl Edwards would be out on lap 193 because of engine failure. Kenny Shiftright would lead for the second most laps somehow, leading for only 17 of them. Kyle Busch tire is the car that led the most laps with 210. And Slider Petrolsky would accidentally wreck Kyle Busch tire and himself on lap 381. And Kyle Busch tire has this to say. Lightning McQueen would end up being the winner of the 31st race of 2008, where Mike Yankee Jr. finished second, Owen Wheeler third, Cal Weathers fourth, and Tony Gassworth rounding out the top five. Kevin Shiftright start at pole position for the 32nd race of 2008, where Todd Marcus would accidentally wreck a bunch of cars and himself. Jack DePost would go airborne on lap 337 because of Eugene Kobareski. Why did you do that? Kyle Busch tire would do a pit maneuver on Eugene Kobareski, who would go airborne before being out on lap 339. Cal Weathers would lead for the most laps, leading for 102 of them, and he goes on to win the 32nd race of 2008, where Maury Clutchburn would finish second, Brick Yardley third, Denny Carlin fourth, and Lightning McQueen rounding out the top five. Bobby Swift will start at pole position for the 33rd race of 2008, where Eugene Kobareski would be seventh as of the first lap, where he wrecks Kyle Busch tire. Now he's out, but here's what the fans have to say, cheering on Eugene Kobareski because they're happy Kyle Busch tire is out. Unfortunately, another mean car is on the track. Brian Brooks would wreck some cars. Why? But he would be out on lap 312 because of Todd Marcus. Hooray! Now, this race was actually pretty competitive because no car led more than 10 laps in a row. The car that led the most total laps was Carl Edwards, leading for 86 of them. But Bobby Swift is still the winner of the 33rd race of 2008, with Cal Weathers finishing second this race, David Raycar third, Greg People fourth, and Matt Karzith rounding out the top five. Lightning McQueen will start at pole position for the 34th race of 2008, where Casey Gears would get flipped on lap 100 because of Eugene Kobareski. Why are you flipping other cars? Darren Ledfoot would lead for the most laps, leading for 132 of them. But Kenny Shiftright, with help from his nephew Kevin, will go on to win the 34th race of 2008, with Kenny's nephew Kevin finishing second this race. Carl Edwards will finish third, Lightning McQueen fourth, and Tony Gassworth rounding out the top five. Kyle Busch tire will start at pole position for the 35th race of 2008, where he would get spun out on lap 213 by Dale Earnhardt Jr. Hooray! He's probably getting revenge for what happened earlier in the season. Hooray! All 43 cars would finish this race on the track. Cal Weathers would lead for the most laps, leading for 143 of them. But Lightning McQueen would still be the winner of the 35th race of 2008, with Tony Gasswort finishing second, Denny Carlin third, Dale Earnhardt Jr. fourth, and Mark Carton rounding out the top 5. There are 4 cars that can win the Piston Cup from the final race of the season. Cal Weathers, Carl Edwards, Lightning McQueen, and Kevin Shiftright. Kevin Shiftright would need a miracle, but the other 3, less than 60 points separate them. So, all of them, well, except for Kevin Shiftright, of course, have a realistic chance of winning the 2008 Piston Cup. For the case of Kevin Shiftright, he would need 2 of them to DNQ. Now for some cars that can't win the Piston Cup this year, but can try again next year. None of these 5 have won a Piston Cup before. Kyle Busch Tires down here because he's inconsistent, and literally everyone is trying to wreck him because he's becoming the Yellow Chick Hicks! At least Dale Earnhardt Jr. is a very popular racer, and Bobby Swift is a fan favorite.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
For the 2008 and 2009 seasons, the final race of the Piston Cup season will be called the Dynaco Light 350. Now, who do you think will win the 2008 Dynaco Light 350? And do you think Kyle Busch Tire is the Yellow Chick Hicks? And the 2008 Dynaco Light 350 will be coming out tomorrow.
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Cal Weathers will start at pole position with Kevin Shiftright to his outside. Row 2 has the 2003 Piston Cup champion Matt Karseth and his teammate Carl Edwards to his outside. Row 3 has Kevin Karvik and David Raycar. What's he doing up here? Row 4 has Jamie McCarry and Kyle Busch Tire, the second most hated Piston Cup racer at the moment. Row 5 is Reed Sorencar, somehow, and Martin Karts Jr. to his outside. Row 6 has Juan Pablo Montoya and Casey Gears, who's struggling this season. Row 7 has the 2002 Piston Cup champion Tony Gasswort and Bobby Swift to his outside. Row 8 has Lightning McQueen, looking for his 3rd straight Piston Cup, and Sage Vanderspin in his final race. Row 9 has Jeff Burnton and Casey Corner to his outside. Now what comes next? Row 10 has Travis Draftville and Brian Vickers. What are they doing here? Row 11 has Brick Yardley and Dale Earnhardt Jr., who start in the same row quite a lot. Row 12 has Greg Beeple and Elliot Draftler to his outside. He's trying to finish in the top 30. Row 13 has Denny Carlin and Ricard Smith, who's qualified for the majority of races this season. Row 14 has Clint Bokar and Morey Clutchburn, both fighting for a spot in the top 20. Row 15 has Ryan Newcar, The Rocket, and Jack DePost to his outside. Row 16 has Brick Hicks, who's had an amazing season so far, and Krusty Rotor, making his final start. Row 17 has Todd Marcus and Kenny Shiftright, also making his final start. Row 18 has Bobby Cabani, finally he's qualified, and Ernie Gearson to his outside. Row 19 is 2 really good cars, Jeff Corvette and Kurt Busch Tire. What are they doing back here? Row 20 has Mike Yankee Jr. and Eric Carmarola, who's surprisingly here. Row 21 has Eugene Kobareski and Michael Cartrip to his outside. And starting in 43rd is Chip Gearings, who surprised everyone this season. These 4 cars, among many others, failed to qualify for this race. Now into the race. Cal Weathers would lead for the first 18 laps of the race before he'd lose the lead to Carl Edwards. Carl Edwards would lead into lap 50, where he'd lose the lead to Kevin Shiftwright. Kevin Shiftwright would only lead for 4 laps before Carl Edwards would retake the lead. We'd lead for 116 laps? How does any car lead for 116 laps? The car that would take the lead from Carl Edwards is Jeff Gorvette, and he'd lead into lap 185, where Matt Karseth would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 15 laps before teammate Carl Edwards would retake the lead, leading for just 1 lap before Lightning McQueen would take the lead from him. He'd lead for 6 laps before Kurt Busch-Tire would accidentally wreck himself out on lap 206, and Kurt Busch-Tire, don't say that word! His former teammate Matt Karseth would take the lead after the restart, leading until lap 245, where Cal Weathers would retake the lead, leading until lap 264, where Eugene Komareski would be 23rd as of that lap, where he wrecks Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Todd Marcus. Right! Carl Edwards would take the lead after the restart, where he'd lead for 8 laps before Kevin Shiftwright would take the lead from him. He'd only lead for 4 laps before he'd lose the lead to Tony Gassworth, who'd lead for a whole 12 laps before Carl Edwards would once again retake the lead, leading for 9 laps before Mike Yankee Jr. would somehow take the lead, leading until lap 304, where Brick Hicks would take the lead from him. Brick Hicks would only lead for 4 laps because Casey Corner would take the lead from him on lap 308. But on lap 310, Carl Edwards would be back in the lead, leading until lap 323, where Cal Weathers would pass him, and he'd lead for the rest of the race, which makes him the winner of the 2008 Dynaco Light 350. Carl Edwards would finish 2nd, right behind Cal Weathers. Kevin Harvick would finish 3rd. Lightning McQueen would finish 4th in this race. Kevin Shiftwright 5th. Jamie McCarty surprisingly finishing 6th. Bobby Swift 7th. Jeff Gorvette 8th. Krusty Rotor finishing 9th in his final race. And Clint Bokar rounding out the top 10. And this all means that Cal Weathers is the winner of the 2008 Piston Cup. This makes the Weathers family the 2nd family to have 3 generations of Piston Cup winners. Carl Edwards would finish 2nd this season, his best ever finish, and Lightning McQueen would finish 3rd, just because he finished behind Cal Weathers and Carl Edwards. Kevin Shiftwright would finish 4th. At least it was over 90 points ahead of Brick Yardley in 5th. Kyle Busch-Tire is slowly becoming the Yellow Chick Hicks! And he finished 6th this season, right ahead of Dale Earnhardt Jr. in 7th. Greg People finished 8th. Bobby Swift would once again finish 9th. And Tony Gassworth had a bad season, finishing 10th. Matt Karseth also had a bad season, finishing 11th. Jeff Burnton would finish ahead of Jeff Gorvette again. Jeff Gorvette had an awful season, not winning a single race. Kurt Busch-Tire and Denny Carlin were extremely inconsistent. Casey Corner was a surprise package. Kevin Harvick was underwhelming. Clint Bokar finished 18th again. Ryan Newcar went airborne a few times this season, but he finished 19th, and Mike Yankee Jr. just barely finished in the top 20. Martin Karks Jr. would lose out, finishing 21st this season. Moray Clutchburn would finish 22nd, only 10 points ahead of Jamie McCarty, who surprisingly finishes 23rd. David Raycar, qualifying for more races, finishes 24th. Juan Pablo Montoya and Ernie Gearson did just about as well as everyone expected them to, but Chip Gearings surprisingly finishes 27th, right ahead of Sage Van Der Spin, who's now retiring. Michael Cartrip, qualifying for every single race this season, finished 29th this season, ahead of Elliott Draftler, somehow. Eugene Komareski would finish 31st this season. Well, good job for him, because he didn't skip any races. 32nd is Brick Hicks, who surprised literally everyone. Krusty Roto would finish 33rd in his final season. Speedy Comet would finish 34th. TG Castlenut would finish 35th. But Casey Gears had a terrible season, finishing 36th. And Ricard Smith would somehow finish 37th. Below where I thought he finished, because he qualified for the majority of races this season. Doug Throttleman would finish 38th. But Reed Sorencar also had a terrible season, which means that he'd finish 39th. And Darren Leadfoot is back to where we know him, 40th position, because he does not qualify for that many races.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
It's quite sad that Kenny Shiftright could not finish in the top 40 in his final season, despite the fact he qualified for more than 20 races in the 2008 Piston Cup season. The 2009 Florida 500 will be coming out soon enough in the year 2022.